So I did a performance of my play, Broke Wide Open, a long time ago in this abandoned storefront in the Bronx. I'm pretty sure that's where this particular performance took place. And this woman was in the audience, and she came up to me and she said, we went to school together. And I looked at her and I was like, Claudia, I'm telling you, I wasn't in the school. My girlfriend, Francesca, she went to school with you. And she didn't believe it. And this went on, we kind of reconnected in that moment. We hadn't seen each other for, I don't know, at least 10 years, at least. And we reconnected, and right up until the other day, she continued to believe that I was in that school, because I guess I was there so much. I used to just visit with Francesca all the time, and so Claudia just believed I was part of her class, and she used to talk about it all the time. And reconnecting with her was amazing, because she was an incredibly generous, spirited person, really supportive, really encouraging kind of human being, very spiritual, but also like straight from the hood, Washington Heights, 100%. She was a teacher. She was amazing, very insightful, really smart, funny, engaging, willing, open. She was great. She had a beautiful family. So I would say she came to see me perform after that probably 30 times over the last, like in a 17-year period. She showed up all the time. She was always one of the first names to pop up when I did fundraisers for raising money to do shows. And she got to see me from that abandoned storefront all the way to running my show off Broadway. And she also was a part of a workshop. I used to teach these performance workshops and these playwriting workshops, and I used to have people write 10-minute plays, except that they were never 10 minutes. They were, and in Claudia's case, I think it was like 40 minutes. But it was still a 10-minute play, and actually, I have the Word document to this play. And I think it was a little over 35 minutes when she finally did it. And this particular workshop was called Spiritual Emergencies. And it was a collection of these beautiful women, amazing, like really brave, because what I asked them to do was I asked these women to take something really difficult in their lives that they found difficult to deal with their families, something that they wanted to deal with, that they wanted to like put out there and just, get it out of their bodies already. And write a play about it, because as I often say, and as I told them that day, the way I look at art is that we're supposed to take the difficult things and turn that into something beautiful. That's what artists are supposed to do. That's what storytelling is about, in my opinion. It's to take things that are hard for us, or, things that we shy away from, that we just avoid, and turn them into a bed of wildflowers, a beautiful sunset, like just turn them into something that is the way that we can get into them and fix it for ourselves, And so in Claudia's case, she wrote about her childhood and something that she experienced in Puerto Rico, where she came from before she came to New York. And it was like an unfinished story, something that she was like in the middle of some kind of spiritual thing, and she never got to finish, and they moved to New York, and she always wanted to go back and finish. But it was also about a cultural thing in her family that was very difficult, and it involved her son. And I'm not going to get into the details, but she wrote about it with all of the courage that a great playwright needs to be a great playwright. She was courageous, She was eloquent. She was fierce. She was vulnerable. She was all of it. And her son came, this big, strong, strapping kid. He wasn't really a kid. I think he was in his early 20s at this point. Or I don't know, maybe he was a late teenager. I can't even remember. But anyway, she did this performance. And the great thing about this workshop is I told people, I want you to write these plays. And then I want you to invite your entire family and anybody close to you to this performance. Like I had a residency at this theater, so I was fortunate, you know, to have the keys and I could use the theater whenever I wanted. And so I found a night where it wasn't being used and I booked it that night, and we just let everybody in for free. And we had a full theater of family and friends of these amazing artists who are part of Spiritual Emergencies. And Claudia's family showed up and she performed this for them. And I will never forget the moment that her son realized that she was describing him in this play. And this big, strong guy crumbled like a little boy, like a son. And the funny thing is, you know, I remember taking a picture of them with my cell phone, because right afterwards he came up and he was like, "You're talking about me?" And she was like, "Yes." And he just grabbed her like a little boy grabs his mom, you know, and she held him, and it was a beautiful moment. And I remember taking a picture of it. Even though it was a private moment, I wanted her to have that, you know. I remember her standing up in front of the audience that night. You know, we had done a number of rehearsals already. It was a beautiful experience. We got together at restaurants, and, you know, all the women and myself, I was so lucky to be around these great artists. And we got together at restaurants and we did rehearsals, and I kind of asked everybody to give one another feedback, and that's how we did it. We did it as a group, and everybody participated, and everybody encouraged one another, and everybody critiqued one another, but everything was positive and uplifting, and everything was for the better of each individual, but also for the group. Like, they took it as, this is us, you know. They kind of gave each other the support that they all needed to put these stories out there that were really scary for some of them, and some of these stories were really deep, like really deep, life and death kind of shit. And I'll never forget when Claudia got up on that stage. She stood up there and she just owned that theater, and she had never performed in the theater before. But she stood up, you know, because, you know, this was a performance workshop. Like, I was trying to provide these women with some theater skills too, you know. And every one of them were amazing, beautiful, magnificent. And she stood up straight, powerful. She owned the space, you know, matronly, in a very, very kind of statuesque kind of way. And she delivered, you know, that story. And I didn't make them memorize it because, you know, we only, you know, I'm not going to make them memorize 30 pages, 50 pages, or whatever. I wanted to take all the pressure off. I just wanted them to be free to write. I wanted to help them give the best performance that they could give. And I didn't want them to feel any pressure. I wanted them to read it. So they had, you know, music stands with them. She stood there, and I could tell that she almost had the entire play memorized. It was coming from inside of her body, not from the page. But she used it as a reference, but it came from inside, and it was very, very strong and very professional. I was so proud of her, and she was so proud of herself. So it was a beautiful moment, you know, and she got a rousing standing ovation. You know, it was families of everybody, so everybody was going to get a standing ovation, but you could tell when you're on stage when it's real and when it's not, you know. And I got to tell you that every performance that night was real, and every reaction was real. It was one of the, you know, like, even though it was just a workshop that I was teaching, I would have to say that it was one of the most meaningful experiences that I've ever had in the theater. And I wasn't even performing, you know, it had nothing to do with me. You know, I was just kind of the facilitator of this moment. And so the funny thing was that, you know, this picture I had in my head of this you know, of Claudia and her son. I don't know if I ever took that picture, and I'm still looking for it because I can't find it. I just can't find that picture. And I'm telling you, I know I took that picture, but it's like, I don't know why I can't find it, because, I found the other pictures that I knew about. But I found one picture that I didn't know about, and it kind of looks like what I pictured in my head of the picture with Claudia and her son. And turns out that she's not hugging her son in that picture. She's hugging me. And I remember that moment, like I was standing there and people were, so amazed that this was after all the performances, actually, when everybody had shared their work and we were all standing around talking afterwards, and it was great. It was like everybody hanging out with their families, and that's why theater is so beautiful. That's why art is so beautiful. Film, everything, go to an art gallery, go to a band playing, and family shows up. Like any kind of art, any kind of public art is an amazing experience. And so we were hanging out afterwards, and she turned around and she just lunged at me and just grabbed me, and you could even see in the picture, I'm kind of taken aback a little bit, like I got her with one arm, but my other arm, it's like she just kept saying in my ear, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I knew what she was talking about. It was something that was really hard for her, really difficult, something that was kind of tragic, that had existed for the entire lifetime of her son, but also it was part of the culture of her family. And she got to get it out and deal with it. And she said it was the first time they ever talked about it. And she just kept saying, "Thank you," and I could see her son. I mean, you could just see, it's like all this stuff just kind of fell off of them, just kind of, they were just like open and free. They had a freedom about them. And I felt so proud of her, of all the other women, of everybody that night. And so the reason I made this video is because I found out today that Claudia passed away a couple of days ago. And I actually just had an email exchange with her recently, and actually we texted. She was supposed to come to the screening of my film at the Manhattan Film Festival, and she was really excited to come. And one thing about Claudia, ever since we disconnected, and even when she was a kid in college and all that, like, she showed up. Like, she did what she said she was going to do. Like, if she said she was going to do something, she did it. And she didn't show up that night. And I knew that she wasn't well. She didn't tell me specifically what was going on with her, but she said she's dealing with some stuff that's not good. So I just, assumed she was ill. And she passed a few days ago. And so, yeah, I went back through my email and I found the Word document to that play, and I sent it to the woman, her friend Sandrine, who was the one who took her to see me that night. When we reconnected, she's gonna memorialize Claudia's life. She's a writer, she's an artist herself, and I was happy to provide her with that. And it's hard when you lose people like this, you know what I mean? Like, she touched so many people's lives, Like, I hadn't seen Claudia in so many years, and it's not like we were friends, like we hung out and went to dinner and stuff like that. It wasn't like that. But there was something about the connection that was really powerful. And I think in some ways it was because we were similar in the way that we were both willing to be vulnerable. And so our friendship, even though we didn't connect often, when we did, it was deep and, very, very visceral and profound all the time. It was not for the lighthearted, you know what I mean? It was for, we always talked about real shit, and we laughed. She was funny as hell, she was a clown. but she was also the most serious person you could ever know. She was not about any bullshit. So it's hard to lose people like that, you know, and she's, I think, my age, you know, so that's sobering as well. And it just makes you realize, you know, there are certain people in my life that I wish I was in contact more often with that I'm not. For whatever the reasons are, you know, friends that have kind of gone by the wayside, things like that. And it makes me think about when I was a little kid, my grandmother was talking to me about forgiveness. And she told me, like, you know, it's the most important thing that you could ever learn is to learn how to forgive people. Because if you don't, you will have nobody in your life. Because everybody in your life is going to disappoint you, especially the people who love you the most, especially the people who you love the most. They're going to disappoint you, they're going to fuck you up, they're going to hurt you. And if you don't learn to forgive people, you will have no friends, you will have no life, you will have nothing. Because those people who hurt you, those are the important people. That's the important thing to have in your life is your people. And in many cases, I've failed at that in my life, for sure. It's always been pretty easy for me to, even though I could be the most loyal human, but at the same time, when I feel that somebody doesn't really care, it is easy for me to step off, you know. I don't know. I think it works both ways. You know, a lot of people have been gone from me, you know, and like I don't know. Claudia leaving makes me think about how important it is. So I just say that to say, I'm not here to tell anybody like, oh, go contact somebody who you haven't contacted for years or whatever, but I am going to say, to sound like, you know, a pretentious asshole, I guess, but don't take your people for granted, you know, and don't take time for granted, and don't take it for granted that you're going to be able to contact somebody tomorrow, because you might not be able to, because people die, you know. My friend Karina said that to me recently, and I haven't spoken to her in a long time, and she had a huge loss in her life, and she said it made her realize, like, people die. That happens. That's a thing. I mean, for me, unfortunately, I've experienced that way too much, and so I know it. And yet, that's a part of life that I don't think any of us deal with very well, and, you know, why dwell on that? You know what I mean? Like, you have to live your life, right? If you're thinking about death all the time and dying, that's just kind of stupid. But I also think it's valuable to allow yourself to deal with that every once in a while, to make you appreciate this moment right now. I'll finish with this. You know, my old friend Jack Rollins, who lived to be like 101 years old, he was kind of a mentor to me, and, you know, he was one of the most human people I've ever known. He ran the spectrum for sure. At the end of his life, I remember I was sitting in Riverside Park with him one day. We used to sit and talk for hours, for years, you know. And we were sitting out there one day towards the end of his life, and he said to me, he's like, you know, you have no idea what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. And we were talking about a script. He had just read my script for a play, and he's like, he's holding it in his hands, you know, 260 pages. And he's like, you did this. Like, nobody could ever take this from you, you know? And he was really proud of it. And he said, you cannot live your life thinking that you have any idea what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, 20 minutes from now, tomorrow, next week, next month, whatever. You have no idea who you're going to meet. You have no idea what kind of opportunities are going to come your way. You have no idea today could be the best day of your life. Tomorrow could be the worst day of your life. You don't know. You don't know. And so the only thing I do know is that whatever you love, whatever you love to do, whoever you love, whatever is important to you, stick with it. Because that's life, you know? And what matters to you now might not matter to you next week. But if you can identify the things that matter to you the most, and in your case, he said, you're a playwright at the time. He didn't even know that I became a filmmaker, you know, which I don't know if he would have appreciated that or not, but whatever, that's a whole nother story. But he was like, you're a playwright, you know, you're a performing artist. Stick with it. Nobody could ever take this from you. This is your play, your work. You wrote this, you did this. You know, you're opening off Broadway. Nobody could take that from you. So, Claudia, today was a hard day for me, you know. It hit me harder than I thought it would. I'm going to miss her. You know, it's funny, today I looked at one of my old fundraisers. It was called 500 Names, and it was an amazing journey to a big production that I did that about 700 people produced. Like, I could tell crazy stories about that. And she was one of the first people, of course, to show up, and she was so excited. When we got to 500 names, she called me, and she was just like, she was so excited. And I think that's how I'm always going to remember her, that she was so genuine, you know, and she was so generous with her love and support and friendship, even to me, who was not one of her main people. But we did have kind of a kindred thing that we acknowledged with each other, and we were good friends, you know. So I'll miss her. Even though I never speak to her and all that, you know, like, I'll miss knowing that she's on this earth existing, and that I could call her whenever I want to or text, and now I can't. But I will say that hers certainly was a life well lived. She was a teacher, and I know she was the perfect person to be a teacher. And I know, without a doubt, that anybody who ever had Claudia Whittingham as a teacher carries that magic with them for the rest of their lives. Like, without a doubt, I know that. And I don't know any of her students. I never met one, but I would bet the farm on that Claudia, you know, anybody who met her, you ain't going to forget her. She was big. So, Claudia, thank you. And may you rest in peace.